All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Matt Sykes, a systems engineer here at Verify, and I'll be your host for today's workshop. Today we're joined by Dre Devat, another SE over here, and he's going to talk to us about ways to speed up your Verify systems. Hey Dre, how you doing today, buddy?
Good, Matt. How about yourself?
Doing well, thank you.
Good,
Okay,
good, good.
everyone, so we're going to get started off with a quick overview of our company and what we do. Next, Dre will lead us into a live demo to show us some ways to speed up your Verify system if it's running a little sluggish. We'll pause for Q&A and get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, not the WebEx chat, but the Q&A panel, please. And then after Q&A, we will reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around and see if you've won. Okay, a quick overview of Verify. Verify is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and Cube-Call analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, remote phone control, change management, and tile plan management. But today we're going to focus on Verify system mechanisms. If you have any other questions on any of our other features, please feel free to chat them over to me, and we'll take those offline and get those answers for you promptly. Okay, one more thing before we get started and kick things off here. For those who are looking for a little more hands-off Verify experience, we do offer a managed consulting service. This is a service that provides a dedicated Verify SE to do all the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a complete hands-off experience. Kind of think of us as an extension of your organization. It provides upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, or anything you need, honestly. So your dedicated Verify systems engineer has you covered. The only thing you have to do is just reach out to us. If you have any additional information, if you want any additional information on our ECS offering, feel free to reach out to your account manager and we'll be happy to see if ECS is right for you. All right, so we're going to go into the wild. So Dre, I'm going to kick the ball over to you.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man. So we're going to talk about a little bit today. If Verify starts running a little slow or a sluggish system in general, maybe it could be the UI, maybe it could be your reporting. So when we first build out your system, we do our best to allocate system resources correctly to keep your system running up to the best of its abilities. But in a lot of circumstances, your environment can change. You get more phones in your environment, more people. Also, our requirements might change as well with newer upgrades. But all of this can add, or we run into an issue where we just kind of run out of resources. So at one time, your system was running great, and you go to run a report, and suddenly things aren't running as smooth as they should. So we're going to quickly talk about a couple things. Most of the time, this is going to come down to how much RAM we have allocated for the actual Verify server in itself. Um, that server then has two allocations. If you're running our let's say our Linux OVA, so we're going to have RAM that goes to the inside servers, then we're going to have RAM that goes to, let's say, the MySQL database that's going to be on there. This can also do on our Windows deployments too. If you're running a local database, especially a local MySQL database, this is going to react the same way. So our first thing is when our 12 version released, we did increase our system requirements for the Verify service for RAM from 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, most of our customers seem to be on our 12 version and up. And if you're using our OVA and only have 8 gigs of RAM on the system, and the system is running slow, probably means Verify isn't getting enough RAM. It's probably getting about 3.5. So we want to bump that up. And depending on your database size, not enough RAM for the MySQL database to cache its records, and overhead for the Linux operating system. So a lot of different things come into play when it comes to RAM. All right, so let's first of all see an easy way to check and see how much RAM we have actually going to our Verify service. So we're going to go up to the gear icon to hover over that. We can go to server platform. And right here in the middle, you're going to see this memory. And this is only going to correlate to the Verify app. I'm sorry, the gigabytes that Verify is using. So we have right now allocated 6 gigabytes of RAM to our demo box that I'm on right now. And we do recommend 8, so I don't know why this is at 6, but I don't think we have a lot of like a ton of database stuff. We usually just transfer some databases over when we need to use them. So I think we run okay here on 6 gig. So that's kind of an easy way to say 6 gig. You know, if you're at 6, 8, you're probably in better shape. But if it says like 3 or 3.5, it's just a little low, and things can really start to get a little sluggish there when you're at that low of RAM. Okay, so now now that we can see how much RAM we got going to the Verify server, let's go take a look and on our OVA here. We're gonna go. We're logged in here to Putty session here to our demo box, and we can take a look by a couple commands. Now this is good. It gets a little technical with some of these commands. A lot of people might not know these commands, so you guys can always reach out, and we can help you. You know, figure out what's the best way to do if you need more RAM if things are running slow too. But best way to check, you do a free space -lm here. This is going to tell you we got 16 gig of RAM on the box, how much is being used and how much is free. Once this starts to get a little low like it is, this is where we start seeing some sluggishness issues with the box, and that can correlate, like I said, back to not having enough RAM for the MySQL database. All right, so this is going to get a little more technical and some commands that you might not have just right off hand. So like I said, please reach out. We can give you these commands just to do some checks right on MySQL. So what we will do here is we can actually check the database size for MySQL. And one thing when it comes to MySQL is MySQL is RAM dependent for performance. So let's say you have a database size of 10 gig and you have 3 gig of RAM allocated to MySQL. Well, MySQL is going to take all that 3 gig and cache everything it can. Everything else is going to be kind of out in the open. So it's going to take time for it to find that stuff that hasn't been cached. So trying to get a 1-to-1 ratio as best as we can with RAM to database size is going to really increase the performance of the database being able to search for those cached records. So we have this command here, which I'm going to copy over here. It's kind of this whole thing here. And you see our databases are kind of small, as I said earlier. So we're not even, I have a gig on either one, any of these databases. So let's say this one said like 2000, right? That would be two gig of RAM. But let's say the database was 10 gig. We can also check to see how much MySQL is getting. There's a command I believe in MySQL to check that too, but we can also check by going to MySQL directory and doing going to this directory MySQL and then do a view on my usually just tab out because then it can fill it out for you. It's mysql.conf, mysqld.conf. And if we scroll down with the arrow key, you're going to find this guy here, your NODB buffer pool size. That's telling it how much RAM MySQL is going to use. So right now we have it set to 8 gig, which is more than enough for the database size we have in there. But if yours says 3 and your database is 10, 15, 20 gig, that's when we really need to start looking at increasing that RAM. So we would increase the RAM on the box, and then we would hop into these config settings and then change this to reflect what we allocated, so we can have enough RAM so your system's running a little better. And then to look at the file setting for Verify, let's just get back to the main folder here. So we go cd opt, cd verify, cd apps, cd insight. And we should do an ls. It's going to be this guy here, just verify.vm options. So we can just do a view on that one. Oh, verify. I swear I've done this before. All right, so here you can see this bottom line here, this XMX It's showing 6 gig as it reflects here to the right in the background there to the right. So we're saying 6 gig. We're going to give verify 6 gig. Let's say if we want to give it 8, we will change that to 8 and then restart the service, and then that will take effect. Okay. So those are kind of the two main things, right, when it comes down to sluggishness with your system. It's all really RAM dependent for us. Now, if your database is really large and you're like, I don't have enough RAM that's going to cover this large database, what else can we do? Well, if we hover over to our CUCM clusters here, we can actually change some purge settings and lower the retention policy that you have on that cluster. So if we scroll down here a little bit, we're going to see this data size management purge settings. This is all going to correlate to your database size. So if this is set to 6 months, and I mean, obviously this can be changed and things like that, but you're going to have 6 months of data. Let's say you wanted to increase it. Let's say, well, I'd like to keep more than 6 months. Well, we could take a calculated guess right now. Let's say you had 10 gig, of database size in 6 months. Well, another 6 months, you'll probably be at around 20 gig database size. So we can actually scale it larger if you want to keep more. But let's say you're like, I don't have the room or I don't have the RAM to be able to do this. We can lower this, set up the purge schedule to run, at night. So the next day it'll be a lot lower. That RAM usage is going to be a little lower that we're going to need to use on that database as well. One thing I do recommend for most people is this. I can't really tell. It's hard to tell you what you should have these set up because you might have a company policy that says, oh, we need to retain 7 years of CDR or 2 years of CDR, things like that. So that's kind of going to be up on into your environment. But one thing I suggest is this CMR data. This is call quality data. Just from my experience in the Cisco world, I would probably set this to 14 days. Most people aren't going to complain about having a bad call, maybe week of, day of type thing. And if you need to go back, I wouldn't see why you would need to go back any further. Now you can set this to whatever you think you guys might need in your environment, but I think 14 days seems reasonable enough when it comes to the call quality data. All right. All right, so we went through those. Those are kind of the main 3 points. MySQL RAM or the database, because it could be also SQL on Windows, if it's local to the box. If you guys are running to or connecting to a remote database, then that's not going to be too much on our end as long as we just have enough RAM for the verify service. And then we talked about the verify service as well. And then we just talked about the purge settings to kind of decrease the size of that database to make it just a little easier on the system if you don't have maybe the resources available on your host. Now, there is another thing that's coming out. We've got database archiving, which is coming out in our EFT 13. I'm on our 12.4.3 box. I don't have access to it this second, but we do have a webinar on it that we talked about where we can split up those databases into hot and cold archives, where now MySQL doesn't really need to have a full year's, let's say, of database in it where it's always caching that, where it's only caching 6 months, a little less RAM usage. And you can also split up those databases onto different servers to unload some of those resources onto different VMs. So we do have that coming out in our EFT 13. So that might be something of interest to a lot of customers with larger databases. Another thing we can take a look at, let's say it's more of a specific slowness, maybe it comes to our dashboards. If you go to the application settings here in the gear icon top right, you scroll down a little bit, we're going to have these dashboard widget settings. Now in here, they're separated into the two different kind of widget types that we've got, which, excuse me, CUCM and Cube. That's pulling actually data from the database. So we can actually set this up for your environment, what I usually do if we have enough RAM on the box is just kind of bump this guy up, double it to 1024. And I've seen some good increases for some customers just by hitting up that max size here on the widget cache. Yeah, so that's an easy one if it's just coming down to your dashboard type or dashboard slowness. Now, when we talk about some other things, when maybe you're running a report that's really slow, it's kind of nice to go take a look at the report and try to be specific as possible in the report, not doing too many contains with a capital X and things like that. The more specific you can get with the report, the better it's going to run, because then the database knows what it's searching for. If it's just trying to search the whole database for numbers, it can get a little slow. And then sometimes not running the reports as long. If you need a year report, maybe run them for 3 months at a time. So those are some kind of options there. When it comes to that. Just looking over my notes here, I think that's all I had there. Went over a couple more topics there to kind of help with some speed issues there. Matt, we got any questions out there?
We do, and awesome job, Trey. Fantastic as always. And
Thank
a great point that you just made there, to the search set criteria and stuff like that within the reports, being as specific as you can, instead of using a contains and it's kind of a wide open conditional operator. Using the ends with patterns or starts with are certainly more dynamic for the querying mechanisms. All
Yeah,
right.
and I could have showed you guys here, but if you see here, if we did a
Mhm.
contains X, right, that's probably the wrong way to do it. Sometimes I do it for customers to see if we got calls going on, but if you've got a couple 100,000 calls, this could take a couple minutes to pull back.
Correct. Instead of combing the database for every one of those records,
Right.
yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, great job, Dre. As always, I'm going to grab control back if you don't mind.
All right.
All right.
Stop
Now,
sharing.
everyone,
Oh,
we're going to enter the Q&A portion of this session. So if you have any additional questions you want to air them right now, we can certainly address them right now. So in the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your WebEx panel, go ahead and ask us some questions. There was one note from Jackie. Jackie said this is one of the most helpful things she has seen actually lately from the Verify instance. So that's good content and good
oh,
praise from Jackie there, Dre.
I love hearing that. Love hearing that. That's awesome. This is a big one. Honestly, though, if we just think about it, this is something I work on with customers every day. It's just a thing. It just happens, right? Like sometimes we under allocate, or sometimes the environment doesn't have enough resources at the time that we set up. You set up Verify. So over some time, things get a little bigger, get a little larger, but then our resources didn't change. So this is a common theme, but it's a thing that people should be knowledgeable about, I think.
Okay. We do have a question here from Isaac. Isaac is asking when Verify 13.0 will be available. And actually, we're going to release an EFT version of 13 first. That I do believe, Dre, back me up if I'm wrong here. I want to say that's going to be the beginning of July.
I believe that's so. Yeah.
Correct. And then the GA would be, a couple of weeks or a month after that. So we're looking for, I believe, beginning of August should be the general availability for Verify 13.0. However, if you want to sign up for our early EFT for 13.0, we will certainly entertain that and provide that access once it's available in a handful of weeks. So you can certainly visit our Planet Verify user community, which I'll show you guys all in a minute here, how you can kind of request the access to the Verify 13.0 EFT that is approaching. All right, well, let's go ahead and get the webinar wrapped up here. So if there are no more questions at the moment, once again, we will mention the Planet Verify community, and we'll go over all that in a moment. But I believe the moment you've all been waiting for this week's webinar winner, and this week's webinar winner is, of course, come on, Charles Goldsmith. Woo! Congratulations, Charles. Your account manager will be reaching out to you shortly to get you paid. Okay, so lastly, join us in 2 weeks where Jim and Victor will comb through how to troubleshoot missing CUCM or partial data from the Verify system. We are going to skip next week because we're actually going to be out in Cisco Live at the event in Las Vegas. We are in booth 3362, so if you want to stop by and see us, please go ahead and do so. Let me just remove the slide deck here. So the planet.verify.com user form that we have here at Verify, as you can see right here in the upper left quadrant here, you can certainly sign up and register on our user community here, and you can request access to the EFT of 13.0 once that's ready in a couple of weeks. Also, you can see here, as I just mentioned, Cisco Live next week, we will be out there in full force. We're going to be in booth 3362. So if you are at the event, please feel free to stop by and see us and get yourself a t-shirt. As well as we're having a probably a customer gathering, I do believe. So reach out to your account managers and see if you want an invitation. All right, we would like to thank everyone for joining today and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care and
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.